Jai Ho. Samsarada vanalalita loka Churnaya karuna guna gunatam Aptasya kayana gunaravasya Vande gururshi charanaravinda Mahaprabhu Kirtana Nitya Gita Paditya Madhyam Manasurasena Mahaprabhu Kirtana Nitya Gita Paditya Madhyam Manasurasena Kirtana Nitya Gita Paditya Madhyam Manasurasena Romanchakam Pasutarangavajo Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Shivikahara Dana Nityanana Singaratal Mandira Majinado Yuktasya bhaktam saniyunjatopi Vande gururshi charanarvindam Chaturvida Shri Bhagavad-Prasada Satmana Chiptan Hari Bhakta Sangha Kirtaiva Chiptin Bhajata Sadaiva Mande Guru Shri Charanaravindan Samsara Dava Nalalita Loka Janaya Karuna Gunagunata Pratikshana Swadhanalulupasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam. Shri Radhikaman Abhayura Para Madhurya Lila Gunarupanana Pratikshana Swadhanalulupasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam. Pratikshana Swadhanalulupasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam. Nikunja Yuno Ratikeni Siddhar Jayani Bhutira Bhikshanina Nikunja Tatarati Daksha Rati Balavasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam. Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam. Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam. Shakshadharice asamastasasti yuktastata bhavyadeva sani. Kintu prabhuya piya eva tasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam. 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 Yasha Prasada Bhagavad-Prasada Yasha Prasadana Nakatirkatopi. Yasha Prasada Bhagavad-Prasada Yasha Prasadana Nakatirkatopi. Dayam Stutvam Stasya Yasasti Sandam Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam. Ayam Shubham Stasya Yasasti Sandam Bande Guru Shri Charanaravinda. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityanamine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nindisesa Sunyavadi Paskatya Desatarine. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Gaura Bhakta-vrinda. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Gaura Bhakta-vrinda. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Gaura Bhakta-vrinda. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Gaura Bhakta-vrinda. Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Bolo Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Gora Haribo, 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 Nita Gora Haribo. Nitya Gaura Hari Bol, Gaura Hari Bol, Nitya Gaura Hari Bol, Nitya Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitya Gaura Hari Bol, Nitya Gaura Premanandi Ki Jai. Hari Bol, Prabhu. You want to sing?
Namami Sharam Sachit Anandarupam Lasat Kundalam Gokule Vrajamanam
Namami Swaram Sachidanandarupam Lasat Kundalam Gokule Vajamanam
Yashoda Viyolo Kaladavamanam Param Nishtamatyanta Todrucha Gopya
Yashoda Viyolo Kaladavamanam Param Nishtam Atyanta Todrucha Gopya
Rudanta Muhurnitra Yugmam Rijantam Karamboja Yugmena Satakhanetram
Rudanta Muhurnitram Yugmam Rijatam Param Yugmena Satakhanetram
Mohoshwasakam Patirekanta Kanta Graivadamodaram Bhativadam
Usvasakam Patirekanta Sthita Graivam Damodaram Bhativadam
Iti Drikshvalila Vir Ananda Kunde Swagosham Nimajantam Akyapayantam
Iti Drikshvalila Virananda Kunde Swagosami Mahajantam Agyapayanta
Tadiye Shita Jeshur Bhattajitadvam Puna Prematastam Shata Vritti Vande
Tadiyeshita Geshu Bhagavad-Gita Punak Prematastam Sataditi Vande
Varam Deva Moksham Na Moksham Vadimva Nachanyam Vrineham Vareshadapiha
Anam Moksham Na Mokshavadimva Nachanyam Vrineham Vareshadapiha
Idam Deva Purnata Gopala Balam Sada Me Manasya Virastam Kimanye
Idam Seva Bhutmata Yugmatatam Damodareha
Idam Te Mukambojam Akyanta Nilay Vitam Kuntalai Snigdharatascha Gopya
Idam Te Mukambojam Adyanta Nilay Vitam Kuntalai Snigdharatascha Gopya
Mohos Chumbitam Bimbaratadaram Manasya Virastam Alam Lakshalabhe
Sakundam Vimam Dakame Manasa Virastam Alam Lakshalabhay
Namo Deva Damodarananta Vishnu Prasida Prabodhu Kajalabdimanam
Ramanta Bhutta Vishnu Prasiddha Prabhu Dukkha Jalabdi Magna
Kripa Drishti Vrisyati Dinabatanu Grihanesha Mamadhyam Eriyakshidresya
Nivajisti Vishtiyati Dinabatanu Vihanisa Mahamajnam Ediyakshidresya
Kuveratmaja Bhadha Mutraiva Yadvat Tvaya Mochitau Bhakti Vajakritau Cha
Kuvera Atmajo Bada Mudaiva Yadvad Tvaya Mochito Bhakti Vajokito Cha
Tata Prema Bhaktim Swakame Prayacha Namokshe Graho Mesti Damodareha
Prema Bhaktim Swakame Prayacha Namokshiga Home Damodareya
Namaste Studamne Spuradipti Damne Tvariyudarayata Vishvasya Damne
Namaste Mumne Spura Dipti Damne Madhyodarayata Vishwasadamne
Namo Radhikaya Tvaidiyai Priyaya Namo Nantalilaya Devaya Tobhyam
Namo Radhikaya Tvadiya Priyaya Namo Nantalilaya Devaya Tubhyam
Namo Radhikaya Tvaidiyai Priyaya Namo Nantalilaya Devaya Tobhyam
Namo Radhikaya Tvadiya Priyaya Namo Nantalilaya Devaya Tubhyam
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama,
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Shri Damodarastikam
Jai Om Vishnupad Paramansa Parajagachasta Tarasatarashi Shri Madhus Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Gaura Bhakta Vinda Ki Jai Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Samakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Shri Mayapura Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Tulasi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Ganga Maya Ki Jai Jamuna Maya Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vinda Ki Jai Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled Guru. All glories to the assembled Guru. All glories to the assembled Guru. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada Patita Pavana Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutali Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityananda. Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Pacharini Nirvisesa Sunyavali Paskati Dasata. Guru Premanandi Haribol.
Namaste Narsingaya. Namaste Narsingaya. Prahlad Ladadaine. Hiranyakashi Purvasaha. Shilatankana Kalaye. Ito Narsingha Parato Narsingha. Yato yato yami tato Narsingha.
Yato yato yami tato Narsingha.
Bahe Narsingha, Hirdaye Narsingha.
Narsingha, Hirdaye Narsingha.
Narsingamadim Sharanam Prabhude.
Narsingamadim Sharanam Prabhude.
Tava Kara Kavalavare Nakam Adbhuta Shringa. Dalita Hiranyakashipu Kanu Bringa. Keshavadilta Kalhari Rupa Jai Jagadish Hare. Jai Jagadish Hare. Nakam Adbhuta Shringa. Jaya Narti
Narari Rupa Jai Jagadish Hare. Jai Jagadish Hare. Jai Jagadish Hare.
Jaya Narsingha Dev, Jaya Narsingha Dev, Jaya Narsingha Dev, Jaya Narsingha Dev. Jaya Bhakta Prahlad, Jaya Bhakta Prahlad, Jaya Bhakta Prahlad, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj. बोल नरसिंह भगवान की जय, भक्त प्रहलाद की जय, प्रभुपाद महाराज की जय।
Prasthai Bhuttiri Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Deve Guruvani Pucharane Nirvisesha Sunivari Paskati Rajitarane Pindaye Tulsi Devaya Priyaye Keshavasya Cha Vishnu Bhakti Pradi Devi Sajirata Namo Namaha. Vrindaye Tulsi Devaya Priyaye Keshavasya Cha Vishnu Bhakti Pradi Devi Sajirata Namo Namaha. Vrindaye Tulsi Devaya Priyaye Keshavasya Cha Vishnu Bhakti Pradi Devi Sajarata Namo Namaha. Vrindaye Tulsi Devi Maharani ki jai.
Namo Namaha Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha.
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha.
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha.
Radha Krishna Seva Pabo Eya Vilashi.
Radha Krishna Seva Baba Abhilasi.
Radha Krishna Seva Pabo Eya Vilashi.
Radha Krishna Seva Baba Abhilasi.
ये तुम्हारा शरण लोय तारा वंश पूर्ण हो.
Tomara Saranaloy Tana Vacha Purna Hoy.
कृपा कोरी कोरो तारे वृंदावन वासी.
Kripa Kori Karatare Vrindavana Vasi.
मोरा ये अभिलाष विलास कुंज दियो वास.
Morae Abhilas Vilas Kunjadiyova.
नयने हेरी बो सदा युग Krishna dase ko ye na mora hoy.
Krishna Krishna dase ko ye na mora hoy.
Shri Radha Govinda preme sada ye na basi.
Shri Radha Govinda preme sada basi.
Shri Radha Govinda preme sada ye na basi.
Shri Radha Govinda preme sada na basi.
Namo Namaha Tulasi Krishna Preyasi. Namo Namaha.
Shri Krishna preyasi namo namah.
Yani kani cha papani Brahma hatyadikani cha tani tani pranashanti pradakshina pade pade.
Yani kani cha papani brahmahatyadikani cha tani tani pranasanti vadishena vade vade.
Yani kani cha papani Brahma hatyadikani cha tani tani pranashanti pradakshina pade pade.
Yani kani cha papani brahmahatyadikani cha tani tani pranasanti vadishena vade vade.
Yani kani cha papani Brahma hatyadikani cha tani tani pranashanti pradakshina pade pade.
Yani kani cha papani brahmahatyadikani cha tani tani pranasanti vadishena vade vade.
Yani kani cha papani Brahma hatyadikani cha tani tani pranashanti pradakshina pade pade.
Yani kani cha papani brahmahatyadikani cha tani tani pranasanti vadishena vade
Hare
vade.
Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Gaur. Jai Tulsi Devi Maharani ki jai. Pindaye Tulsi Devai Priyaye Keshavasya Cha. Vishnu Bhakti Pradi Devi Sachivrata Namo Namaha. Pindaye Tulsi Devai Priyaye Keshavasya Cha. Vishnu Bhakti Pradi Devi Sachivrata Namo Namaha. Vrindaye Tulsi Devai Priyaye Keshavasya Cha. Vishnu Bhakti Pradi Devi Sachivrata Namo Namaha. Vrindaye Tulsi Devi Maharani ki jai. I bow before you again and again. My desire is to attain the service of Shri Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you has his wishes fulfilled. Bestowing your mercy upon him, you make him a resident of Vrindavan.
My desire is that you also give me a residence where the groves of Shri Radha. Thus within my vision of always behold the beautiful pastime to Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower carrying damsels of Raj. Please give me the privilege of personal service and make me an ornament servant. Please be the fallen in all the seven Krishna praise. May I always swim in love with Shri Shri Radha and Govinda. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shri Krishna Ki Chito Dapanamana Amadi Padivapadam Shri Akari Vachandakara Dharanam Vidyavadu Jivanam Anandam Burivardhanam Pratiparam Purnamrita Shadanam Sarvatmasnam Param Param Vijayati Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Baudha Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatrarpita Niyamita Smarane Nakala Itadrishi Tava Kripaya Bhagavan Mamapi Durdhaiva Midrishamiya Janina Nuraga Trinarapi Sunichena Tarorapi Saishruna Amani Ramanadena Kirtaniya Sada Hari Na Dhanam Na Janam Na Sundarim Kavitam Va Jagarisha Kamaye Mama Janmani Manish Bhavata Tukitwai Vainandatanuja Kinkaram Paritamam Visame Bhavambudo Kripaya Tavapar Pankaja Stitaduli Sadrisham Vichintaya Nayanam Galora Shrudharaya Vadanam Gadigadharudaya Gira Purakai Chitam Vapukara Tavanam Agrahane Vavisati Jugaitam Nimishena Chakusha Prarusaitam Sunyaitam Jagat Sarvam Govinda Verahe Name Aslishava Padaratam Pinastumam Adarshanar Marmatam Karotuva Jatatata Babidadatulam Poto Matpranadatastu Saivana Para Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shri Krishna Ki Jai. Glory to the Shri Krishna Sankirtan, which cleanses your heart of all the dust accumulated for years, and extinguishes the fire of conditioned life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan moment is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because it increases the ocean of transcendental bliss. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds of millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names, you have invested with your transcendental energies. There's not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names.
But I am so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them.
One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige.
It should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O mighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service birth after birth. O Son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yet somehow or other I fall into this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up, and when will the hairs on my body stand on end at the recitation of your holy name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I am feeling all vacant and worldly in your absence. I know no one but Krishna is my Lord, and he shall remain so, even if he handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. Shri Chaitanya, Siksastakam Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Tinami Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharane Nirvisesa Sanyavali Paskati.
The act and offenses in the matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that should be avoided. They are as follows. 1.
To blaspheme the devotees who have dedicated their lives to propagating the holy names of the Lord.
2.
To consider names of demigods like Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, to be equal to and independent names of Lord Vishnu.
3.
To disobey the orders of the spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic literature or literature in pursuance of the Vedic literature.
5.
Consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna as imagination.
6.
To give some interpretation of the holy name of the Lord.
7.
To commit sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord.
8.
To consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are offered in the Vedas as fruitive activities or karma kanda.
9.
To instruct the faithless person about the glories of the holy name.
10.
To not have complete faith in chanting the holy names, and to maintain material attachments even after understanding so many instructions in this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be a Vaishnava must carefully guard against its benefits in order to quickly achieve the desired success. Krishna Prema! Now let us offer our most humble obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They are just like desired trees that can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the Western conditioned souls. Kalpatarabhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha Vaishnava Thakur ki jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tinami Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharane Nirvisesa Sanyavali Paskati. So today there is Harinam Sankirtan at 1:45 this afternoon at Westlake Center. So everyone's invited to come. I think there's one restriction. Only kids 13 years old or more can come to the kirtan today. And this is part of a international protest made by ISKCON, or the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, due to the horrible atrocities taking place in Bangladesh, where Hindus and even maybe other minorities are being violently and brutally persecuted. So ISKCON is making a statement all over the world that the Bangladesh government should not only punish severely all the people who have done this, and we know who they are, we have the names, and they should be severely punished, and there should be a guarantee that all minorities, not only the Hindus, but all minorities in Bangladesh should be protected to practice their religion without any interference by jihadis and fanatic people who are full of hate and are killing also, and violating women and all kinds of things they're doing, burning temples, burning a statue of a Murti of Srila Prabhupada, breaking deities, and so forth. This is crazy what's happening. So if you would like to come, please come. The more the better, because we want to make a statement all over the world that this is not acceptable. This is not human behavior. This is like worse than animals. Animals will only attack when they feel threatened or if they're extremely hungry. These people, these jihadis, they attack due to hatred. There's a big difference. And they want to completely annihilate the Hindus in Bangladesh. But actually their real purpose is they're emboldened by the fact that the jihadis or the fanatics in Afghanistan, the Taliban, were able to get rid of the United States and take over their country and reestablish their fanatical Islamic state. So the jihadis in Bangladesh want to do the same thing. They actually, the Hindus are not the real issue. It's they want to destroy the government that's there and declare Bangladesh under Sharia law and make it a jihadi state, just like Taliban. That's what the real issue is. And the Hindus are just pawns in that strategy. And so the government of Bengal should wake up and understand, Bangladesh should wake up and understand what is really happening. Okay, so today we're in Canto 2, Chapter 7, verse number 34 and 35. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Yecha Pralamba Kara Dardura Kesharista Maleba Kamsa Yavana Kapipundra Kadaya Anyecha Salva Kujabalva Dantavakra Saptoksha Sambara Vidurata Rukmi Mukaya Yevai Mride Simiti Salina Attachapa Kamboja Matsya Kurusin Sinjaya Aika Yadaya Yasyant Adarsanam Alam Balaparta Bhima Vyajaha Vayena Harina Nilayam Tadiyam. So we're in a section of the Srimad Bhagavatam where we're hearing Lord Brahma explaining to Narada about the Leela avatars of the Lord. There are Yuga avatars, the Leela avatars, Purusha avatars, and Shaktavish avatars, and in other words, there's 6 types of different avatars. Today we're hearing, in this whole section, we're hearing about the Leela avatars. So the translation by Srila Prabhupada: all demoniac personalities like Pradlamba, Denuka, Baka, Keshi, Arista, Chanura, Mustika, Kuvalyalpita, elephant, Kamsa, Yavana, Narakusura, Pondraka, great marshals like Salva, Dravida, monkey, and Balvala, Dantavakra, the 7 bulls, Sambara, Kuru, Srinjaya, Kekaya, would all fight vigorously either with Lord Hari directly or with him under his names of Baladeva, Arjuna, Bhima, etc. And the demons thus being killed would attain either the impersonal Brahmajyoti or his personal abode in the Vaikuntha planets. So, this is a list of all demons, and they're so brazen and shameless that they want to fight with Krishna and Balaram and Arjuna and Bhima and so forth. See, they have no shame, and they have no restraint. And it's like flies flying into a fire, and they're all going to be destroyed by the Lord. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. All manifestations in both the material and spiritual worlds are demonstrations of the different potencies of Lord Krishna. The personality of Godhead Baladeva is his immediate personal expansion, and Bhima, Arjuna, etc. are his personal associates. The Lord would appear, and he does so whenever he appears, with all his associates and potencies. Therefore, the rebellious souls, like the demons and the demoniac men, mentioned by names like Pralamba, would be killed either by the Lord himself or by his associates. All these affairs will be clearly explained in the 10th canto, but we should know well that all the above-mentioned living entities killed would attain salvation either by being merged in the Brahmajyoti of the Lord or being allowed to enter into the abodes of the Lord called Vaikunthas. This has already been explained by Bhismadeva, first canto of the Bhagavatam. All persons who participated in the battlefield of Kurukshetra or otherwise with the Lord or with Baladeva, etc., would benefit by attaining spiritual existence according to the situation of their minds at the time of death. Those who recognized the Lord would enter the Vaikuntha, and those who estimated the Lord as only a powerful being would attain salvation by merging into the spiritual existence of the impersonal Brahmajyoti of the Lord. But every one of them would get released from material existence. Since such is the benefit of those who played with the Lord inimically, one can imagine what would be the position of those who devoutly served the Lord in transcendental relationship with him. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. All demoniac personalities like Pralamba, Denuka, Baka, Keshi, Arista, Chanura, Mustika, Kuval, Yapita, Elephant, Kamsa, Yavana, Narakasura, and Pondaraka, great marshals like Salva, Dravida, Monkey, and Balvala, Dantavakra, the seven bulls, Sambara, Vidurata, and Rukmi, all as also great warriors like Kamboja, Matsya, Kuru, Sanjaya, and Kakaya, would all fight vigorously, either with the Lord Hari directly, or with him under his names of Baladeva, Arjuna, Bhima, etc. And the demons, thus being killed, would attain either the impersonal Brahmajyoti or his personal abode in the Vaikuntha planets. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So if you're going to go and fight someone, you should fight the Lord, because at least you'll get Brahmajyoti or maybe even Vaikuntha. So you see, going to Krishna, whether you have no material desires, whether you're full of material desires, or if you just want liberation, it's a deal. So people don't understand this. We should explain this to all the demons. Look, you want eternal life, so therefore you should go to Krishna. That's the only way. The Lord Shiva cannot give you eternal life. Lord Brahma cannot give you eternal life. But Krishna can. He's the only one. He's called Mukunda, the giver of liberation. So we have a real interest in understanding Srimad Bhagavatam by hearing it every day and learning new things every day. Just like if you live in the material world, eventually life becomes boring. It's same old, as they say. Because it's the same thing, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. So eventually people, get bored with it. And then when you get really bored, you just watch television all day. So now They have 24-hour television because there are people that are really bored and they don't know anything else but nonsense. So they watch the television. Nowadays, I went to a devotee's house some years ago, and he had a 96-inch television. It was big. And when I went into the house, everyone was watching television. And they said, "Oh, Haribol, 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 Haribol." They kept one eye on the television, one eye like they couldn't even turn around like that. They just, sort of went a little bit like that. So, "Oh, Haribol, Haribol." Then I was doing a house blessing in a devotee's house. He bought a new house. This is somebody else. And he sort of disappeared. And then I was giving a lecture, and I explained how nonsense it is to have a big television as the Thakur of the house. I said the whole point of the Griha Pravesh is to establish Krishna as the Thakur of the house, and he should be the central point of focus of everybody in the family, And I said, and if you have a television, open your window, make sure you look and make sure no one is standing down from the window, and then take your television and throw it out the window. Just then, the owner of the house came in. He had just come back from Costco, and he was carrying this 96-inch screen. And everyone started laughing like anything because it was funny. I'm saying, take it and throw it out the window, and this guy's bringing it into the house to establish it. So you see how sad things are. Even devotees get carried away with the so-called normative behavior of people today. In other words, if you buy a new house, you got to have a big screen. And you have to have the television, you have to have the Xbox. In fact, I was speaking to a friend of mine who works in Microsoft, and I was asking him, I said, what actually makes money in Microsoft? He said, well, there's many different paths. He said, one of the biggest paths is internet security. He said, Microsoft really makes a lot of money with internet security. Because people, he said, like, even last night, he said, I had to stay up most of the night because there was a emergency in Thailand. Because, they have their software all over the place, right? And they have to, and he said, and this is becoming a big thing, he said that even in Italy now, they don't want all the servers to be in the United States. They want it all to be in Italy, and they want Italians to know how to go into into Microsoft's intellectual property and maintain it themselves and surveil it themselves, where that's not allowed by Microsoft or in other companies, and Amazon also. But now they are insisting that if they're going to buy their technology, that they have to have complete control of it. So anyway, you see, and then I said, well, is that it? He said, no, we make it. But he said that in Christmas time, the biggest money maker is Xbox. I said, really? He said, it's very strange. He said, people will buy the new Xbox every year and get rid of the old one. Now, Xbox is the worst thing you could get for your kid. I'll tell you right now. It is the worst thing that you could get. If you want your kid's brain to be completely ruined, buy them an Xbox. I mean, it's even worse than the cell phone. It's even worse than the computer because it completely seizes their mind and is full of nonsense. Okay, so we see their parents are buying a new one every year to have the latest Xbox. It's one of the biggest money makers of Microsoft. So here we see that we're living in what's called the weapons of mass distraction. We're living in a culture in which there are weapons of mass distraction, distracting our minds from Krishna. And Prabhupada explains, and Krishna and Srimad Bhagavatam also it's explained, anything that takes the mind away from Krishna is Maya. So to be able to focus the mind on Krishna is very, very essential if one wants to have a successful life. Success is, at the end of life, if one can remember Krishna, you go back to God. That's success. Success is not forgetting Krishna all during life and hoping that at the last minute you can remember him. Well, you won't be able to, I'm telling you right now. You have to practice all throughout life to fix the mind on Krishna so that at the moment of death, you're not distracted and you can focus. Just like there was one time a person who never was able to focus their attention. But this person was a pious person, but he couldn't focus completely on, all the time. So he was in Swarga, and from there he was going to, he got promoted right up to the doors of Vaikuntha. But they were closed, and he was told, you have to wait till they open. He said, okay. So he was waiting, but he had this problem of focusing all the time. He would focus for some time, and then his mind would wander away. And then while his mind was wandering, the doors opened and closed, and he missed them. He's still there. Every time they open, his mind is distracted, and they close before he can. So he's never going to get into Vaikuntha because he cannot focus his mind. Right? So this is what you learn by using these weapons of mass destruction. You can't focus the mind. And therefore, it's very difficult to be Krishna conscious when your mind is distracted all the time. Okay, so it says here that even the demons on the battlefield at Kurukshetra or any battlefield against Krishna and Krishna's devotees, if at the moment of death they are looking at the Lord or thinking about the Lord, even out of fear or ghastliness or even inimically, they get liberated. Most likely they can go to Vaikuntha. But if they think that the Lord is an ordinary person, that they can kill him, and that's the way they're thinking about him, they go into the Brahmajyoti. So let's read what Prabhupada says. He says, all persons who participate in the battlefield of Kurukshetra or otherwise with the Lord or with Baladeva, etc., would benefit by attaining spiritual existence according to the situation of their minds at the time of death. That's the whole point, the situation of the mind at the time of death. Those who recognized the Lord would enter Vaikuntha, and those who estimated the Lord as only a powerful being would attain salvation by merging into the spiritual existence of the impersonal Brahmajyoti of the Lord. Now, Prabhupada explains the Brahmajyoti is already a fallen position. You're not actually liberated when you merge into the Brahmajyoti. It looks like you're liberated because the Brahmajyoti itself is eternal. It's the effulgence of Krishna's body. It's spiritual. Brahmanahi pratistaham amritasya vyayasya cha. So the 14th chapter, 27th verse explains that. It is the state of eternity. But there's no devotional service there, because to merge into Brahmajyoti, you have to deny your individuality, and you deny the individuality of Krishna. So those people who think that Krishna is just some really powerful guy, but they don't accept him as God, they can merge into the Brahmajyoti, which is a position of eternality, of Sat, but they will fall down because there's no possibility of devotional service. And there's no possibility, a very little possibility of being promoted from Brahmajyoti to Vaikuntha or Goloka Vrindavanam. There's a small possibility, only if one has a bona fide guru can they go through the Brahmajyoti to Vaikuntha. But most people, especially the ones that are Mayavadis, they don't have bona fide gurus. So therefore, they'll get stuck in a Brahmajyoti, and then as soon as they have the slightest material desire, they fall down again. So therefore it says, but every one of them would get released from material existence. Why is this? Because they were in some kind of contact with Krishna. That's why. So whether you have no desire, material desires, whether you have all material desires, or whether you want liberation, you should go to Krishna. Because you cannot be shortchanged. You'll always be benefited by going to Krishna, even if you're inimical to the Lord. Okay, so this is hard to understand because Krishna is not a vengeful person. He's always benefiting his devotees and anyone who comes to him, whether positively or negatively. However, Krishna does say, and we read this yesterday, but let's read it again so it's clear in our minds. In the 16th chapter of Bhagavad-Gita, he says, Tamaham drisata kuran samsaresu naradamam Shripam ajasram asubam asurveva yonisu. Those who are envious and mischievous, who are the lowest among men, I cast perpetually into the ocean of material existence, into various demoniac species of life. So this verse is talking about the jihadis and people like that. And the purport, Prabhupada says, in this verse, it is clearly indicated that the placing of a particular individual soul in a particular body is the prerogative of the supreme will. Prerogative means it's uniquely under control of Krishna. No one else has any say in this. And then it says, the demoniac person may not agree to accept the supremacy of the Lord, and it is a fact that he may act according to his own whims. But his next birth will depend upon the decision of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and not on himself. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, it is stated that an individual soul, after his death, is put into the womb of a mother, where he gets a particular type of body under the supervision of superior power. Therefore, in the material existence, we find so many species of life, animals, insects, men, and so on. All are arranged by the superior power. They are not accidental. As for the demoniac, it is clearly said here that they are perpetually put into the wombs of demons, and thus they continue to be envious, the lowest of mankind. Such demoniac species of men are held to be always full of lust, always violent and hateful, and always unclean. The many kinds of hunters in the jungle are considered to belong to the demoniac species of life. So, this is a serious indictment of all demons. And we should be very careful not to associate with the demons. Like, for example, there are, on television, many demons. There are people that are completely out of control. And there are in, let's say, rock bands, many demons who are completely out of control. And there are teachers in school that are demons, that are out of control. And by associating with these demons, whether it's in school, whether it's in a concert, or whether it's on the television or in a movie, when you associate with demons, it doesn't matter, it's a movie, you get contaminated. So therefore, when Prabhupada was speaking about his devotees, he would say, well, they have come from good families, many of them are well educated, but they have given up so many things just to be in Krishna consciousness. They're not going to the movie, they're not drinking alcohol, they're not engaging in illicit activities, etc. So he was explaining this unique qualities of the devotees that convince other people that Krishna consciousness is actually a good thing. It's not a bad thing, because they've given up all these bad habits, and along with developing good habits, they have developed the 26 qualities of a genuine devotee. And what are those qualities? Well, some of them, or most of them, are mentioned in the 14th chapter. It's on the Srimad Bhagavatam also, but I'm sorry, the 16th chapter, where it says, Abhayam Sattva Samsudir. And it says, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, fearlessness, purification of one's existence, cultivation of spiritual knowledge, charity, self-control, performance of sacrifice, study of the Vedas, austerity, simplicity, non-violence, truthfulness, freedom from anger, renunciation, tranquility, aversion to fault-finding, compassion for all living entities, freedom from covetousness, gentleness, modesty, steady determination, vigor, forgiveness, fortitude, cleanliness, and freedom from envy and from the passion for honor. These transcendental qualities, O son of Bharata, belong to godly men endowed with divine nature. So that is the whole point of Krishna consciousness education, to be endowed with godly qualities and develop what's called the divine nature rather than the asuric nature. When you associate with demons, you develop the asuric nature. When you associate with genuine devotees and Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad-Gita and the words of the acharyas, you develop the divine nature. So we have to think about these things. We have to decide, which way am I going to go in this lifetime? Am I going to go toward the divine, or am I going to go toward the asuric nature or culture? So today, more and more, the society is turning toward the asuric culture. And it started a long time ago, but the major things in America were, number one, Roe versus Wade, when they made abortion legal, where it was completely illegal before. And then there's a so-called sexual revolution that sort of was accompanied by LSD and young people taking all kinds of drugs. And then it's progressed even further in gender neutrality and in destruction of so-called white culture. And it goes on and on. When they stopped reading the Bible in school, a whole bunch of things happened in the 1960s, and they're continuing up until today, changing the culture from, it used to be somewhat of a Judeo-Christian culture in the United States, and now it's become a demoniac culture, especially with massive slaughterhouses and atomic bombs. And Prabhupada said their scientific advancement, the most noteworthy scientific advancement is their ability to kill more people faster. So, with an atomic bomb, you can kill many more people much faster than with a machine gun or with a knife or with a machete. So he says this is their achievement. They're killing people faster, with vaccines and with pandemics and this thing and that thing. Okay, so in the purport to 16th chapter verses 1 to 3 that I just read, it says, the social institution known as Varnashram Dharma, the institution dividing society into 4 divisions of social life and 4 occupational divisions or castes, is not meant to divide human society according to birth. But the false caste system that's being practiced today in India does that. It divides people into different divisions. It's not meant to divide human society according to birth. Such divisions are in terms of educational qualifications. They are to keep the society in a state of peace and prosperity. The qualities mentioned herein are explained as transcendental qualities meant for making a person progress in spiritual understanding so that he or she can get liberated from the material world. That's the whole purpose of Krishna consciousness and of life. So we have to decide, and the sooner we decide, the better. Do we actually want to be liberated from the cycle of birth and death? And the reason should not be so that you can have better sense gratification. That's not the right reason. We should be, I mean, the materialists, they want to be liberated from birth and death because they want to have extended, uninterrupted sense gratification. But the devotee should want to be free from birth and death so they can continue devotional service eternally. So even the purpose of attaining eternal life is diametrically different between the demons and the devotees. The demons are trying to be eternal, but using mechanical means and using, modern technologies and different things like that in order to extend their enjoyment of sense gratification. The devotees are not interested in extending the duration of sense gratification. In fact, in order to begin life, you have to stop sense gratification, gross sense gratification, as opposed to pleasing the senses through Krishna consciousness. There's a difference. The Mayavadis want to stop all sense gratification and all sensual activities. Okay, fine. But that includes also doing devotional service. So their whole thing is nonsense. It's negated. But the devotees are not interested in stopping all sense gratification, because when you take prasadam and respect it, you're pleasing your senses. When you take a bath, you're pleasing your senses. When you hear Srimad Bhagavatam, you're pleasing your senses and your mind, the subtle senses. So in Krishna consciousness, we're not against or we're not denying the senses. Therefore, the yogis will deny the senses. They'll sit on a bed of nails. They'll put nails through their body. In fact, I was in Vrindavan once, and a sadhu came. He was completely naked. He had ashes on his body and had a nail, and it was a big nail, through his genital. And he had his arm up like this, and he had not let his arm down for at least, he claimed, 16 years. And his fingernails had grown real big, and his hand had atrophied, right? So they do things like this to deny the senses. But we don't deny the senses in Krishna consciousness. We purify the senses and get the senses engaged in Krishna's service. So you see, there's a major difference, even though someone may be a yogi, someone may be a jnani, but the reasons why they're doing it can be completely, I'd say, wrong. Whereas devotees, even if you come with wrong reasons, you'll eventually be purified if you take the association of genuine devotees. So there's a major difference between Mayavadis, Jnanis, and karma yogis and so forth, and devotional service. Okay, so then it says that the whole purpose of this Varnashram system is to help people become liberated and go back from the material world and go back to Godhead. Okay, so now, what is the main thing that's keeping people away from such a wonderful goal? It's speculation. And so we had homework from last week. Every Saturday we have a session for our kids, because if our kids are not properly educated, everything we're doing is actually a waste of time. If we can't educate our kids to become Krishna conscious, we have actually failed, right? So anyway, did you do your homework, Shasta? Yeah. Anybody else did their homework? Did you do the homework? No. Okay. Oh, you want to read it? You come over here. And we should think about this seriously. If we can't educate our kids to be Krishna conscious, we failed. all the chanting, all the festivals, everything, the whole purpose is that we can pass on this Krishna consciousness to the next generation. But what did Prabhupada do? He passed on all this knowledge and all these practices to a whole generation of kids. We were kids when we joined. Okay. Good. First read what the homework is.
Okay. So, the homework assignment from last week was to analyze the phrase Nirashtakuhakam from Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st Canto, 1st Chapter, 1st Verse, and then answer the question, what are the illusory representations of the material world that don't exist in the spiritual world?
Okay, so in the 1st Canto, 1st verse, Srimad Bhagavatam, this phrase is there, right? And the meaning of the phrase, go ahead and read it.
So the first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam is very important because it sets pretense for the following central topics of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Who is God? What are the qualities and attributes of God? What is the absolute truth? And what is the nature of the spiritual world? The translation of the verse states, O my Lord Sri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, O all-pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. I meditate upon Lord Sri Krishna because he is the absolute creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. He only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion, as one is bewildered by the illusory representations of water seen in fire or land seen on water. Only because of him do the material universes, temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature, appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Sri Krishna, who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world.
So that's the word, that's the phrase. Eternally free from the illusory representations of the material world.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. The last lines of the verse states, Dhahamna svena sada nirashtakuhakam satyam param dhimahi. The phrase sada nirashtakuhakam means that which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world, and is used to describe the transcendental abode of the Supreme Lord in the spiritual world. This phrase helps us understand the difference between the material and spiritual worlds. The material world is an inverted, perverted reflection of the spiritual world. This means that there are many correlations between the material and spiritual worlds. That is not to say that the material and spiritual world are the same. The material and spiritual worlds have the same variegatedness, but the spiritual world is pure, whereas the material world is filled with lust. So the following is a table that shows the differences between the material and spiritual worlds according to references from Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. So from Bhagavad Gita 7th chapter 12th verse, we learn that in the material world, the living entities are controlled by the three modes of material nature. But in the spiritual world, the living entities are above the modes of material nature. The modes do not exist in the spiritual world. From the 7th chapter 13th verse, we learn that the living entities are encompassed by a material form which covers their spiritual bodies. But living entities are situated in their actual spiritual bodies in the spiritual world. From Bhagavad Gita 7th chapter 13th verse, again, we learn that in the material world, people live in mixed modes, and thus there are many material designations, like familial attachments. But in the spiritual world, everyone is in Vishuddha Sattva, or transcendental goodness, and thus they are above any material designations. From Bhagavad Gita 7th chapter...
That's why Lord Krishna, he's not prejudiced. He'll give liberation, even to demons, right? Yeah. Because he's not affected by anything in the material world. Mm-hmm. But we get affected, and we get angry. Just like today on Sankirtan, there should not be any animosity toward Islam or any religion, right? We're talking about people who claim to be Muslims, but actually they're not following their religion, right? Those are the people that are committing these types of atrocities. Go ahead.
And then from Bhagavad Gita 7th chapter 13 verse again, we learn that the living entities are always forgetting Krishna in the material world, but in the spiritual world, the living entities never forget Krishna. They remember him all the time. From Bhagavad-Gita 15th chapter 4th verse, we learn that birth, death, old age, disease, abortion, and reproduction all exist in the material world. According to Bhagavad-Gita 13th chapter 8th to 12th verses, one should try to understand the distress of accepting birth, death, old age, and disease. There are descriptions in various Vedic literatures of birth. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, the world of the unborn, the child's stay in the womb of the mother, its suffering, etc., are all very graphically described. It should be thoroughly understood that birth is distressful. Because we forget how much distress we have suffered within the womb of the mother, we do not make any solution to the repetition of birth and death. Similarly, at the time of death, there are all kinds of sufferings, and they are also mentioned in the authoritative scriptures. These should be discussed. And as far as disease and old age are concerned, everyone gets practical experience. No one wants to be diseased, and no one wants to become old, but there is no avoiding these. Unless we have a pessimistic view of this material life, considering the distresses of birth, death, old age, and disease, there is no impetus for our making advancement in spiritual life. But in the spiritual world, birth, death, old age, disease, abortion, and reproduction do not exist. And then, according to Srimad Bhagavatam,
That's why there's no such thing as illicit sex in the spiritual world, because everyone's eternal. They don't have to reproduce. And when it was described that just like we read the other day, that the sexual desires of the gopis were increased by hearing Krishna's beautiful singing. And it doesn't mean the same thing as in the material world. The sexual desires of the gopis and Krishna are fulfilled through positions of the body, like the way Krishna's threefold, three-bending form, holding the flute, playing mellifluous tunes on the flute, and singing nicely. This gives people ecstasy beyond any type of physical stimulation. They get stimulated by seeing the eyebrows of Krishna move, or the way he holds his head, or the way he sings, or the way he plays the flute. This causes extreme states of ecstasy in the residents of Vrindavana. See? So when they see Krishna stealing the butter, it causes a type of ecstasy that's not comparable to any type of pleasure one can have through the material body. So we cannot equate, like for example, illicit sex doesn't exist in the spiritual world. Right? And sex as a bodily stimulation is not existing in the spiritual world. But there is ecstasy due to positions of the body, due to movement of the eyes, due to movement of the lips, due to even touching and things like that could take place in the spiritual world. So we cannot project our contaminated ideas of things onto the spiritual world. We have to actually understand what are the differences. There are many similarities, but there are people here, there are people there. The people here have bodies, people there have bodies, but their bodies are spiritual, they're not material. Say. So once we begin to understand the similarities and the differences, then we no longer project our limitations onto the people in the spiritual world. We understand that it's completely different than what we are accustomed to. Hare Krishna.
And then according to Srimad Bhagavatam, 8th canto, 17th chapter, 27th verse, time is a function that exists in the material world. So according to the verse in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, the time factor is something described as kala srotra, or waves of time. Everything in this material world is within the time factor and is being carried away by waves of attraction, which represent the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Unlike the spiritual world, time has an effect on material nature. We can perceive with our own senses how, by the passing of time, one's material body grows from youthful to frail and old. Time exists in the spiritual world because it is an expansion of the Lord. However, time does not have any effect on the transcendental pastimes that are eternally happening. This is explained by Srila Prabhupada in the purport of Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, 11th Chapter and 38th Verse. There is complete agreement between Srimad Bhagavatam and Brahma Samhita. Eternal time is never lost along with the life of Brahma. It continues, but it has no ability to control the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because the Lord is the controller of time. In the spiritual world, there is undoubtedly time, but it has no control over activities. Time is unlimited, and the spiritual world is also unlimited, since everything there exists on the absolute plane. And then, another difference is that there are demons in the material world, but there are no demons in the spiritual world. And finally,
But they hear about them.
they hear about the demons in the spiritual world, but there are no demons actually within the spiritual world.
Just like we're hearing about the demons in Bangladesh, right? Are there demons like that here? Yeah, there are also, but we're not seeing them because we live in a place that seems to be relatively peaceful. So there are demons, but they're only heard about. They don't actually exist in the spiritual world.
And then finally, in the material world, there are the threefold calamities: Adhyatmika, Adibhautika, and Adidaivika. According to Srila Prabhupada in the purport of Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th Canto, 14th Chapter, 25th Verse, there is no escaping from the onslaught of the threefold miseries in the material world. The so-called happy materialistic person is constantly having to endure the threefold miseries of life, called Adidaivika, Adhyatmika, and Adibhautika. Actually, no one can counteract these threefold miseries. All three may assail one at one time, or one misery may be absent and the other present. Thus, the living entity is full of anxiety, fearing misery from one side or the other. The conditioned soul must be disturbed by at least one of these three miseries. There is no escape. And in the spiritual world, the threefold calamities do not exist.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Very good. So, like I said, if we can't teach our kids to be Krishna conscious, we failed. But Krishna consciousness is not simply one or two things. It's a whole package. But that package begins with and ends with hearing and chanting every day. Bhagavad-Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, spoken by genuine devotees. Okay, so now the homework for next week is very interesting. It's a series of articles that you have to read that show what nonsense is going on as far as science is concerned. So, there are several very interesting articles. One is, surprise, the Big Bang isn't the beginning of the universe anymore. Okay, although it's still in the textbooks in schools. So you can look that up. It says, surprise, the Big Bang isn't the beginning of the universe anymore. You can look it up on the internet. It's a very interesting article. And then secondly, there's a very interesting article. It says, scientists may have solved the mystery of matter's origin. The scientists may have solved the mystery of matter's origin. And I want to read a little bit of this. This is an article written by Sarah Kaplan, Sarahkaplan. And she says, for decades, scientists have puzzled over one of the most essential mysteries of physics. Where did all the stuff that makes up the universe come from? Now, researchers at the University of California at Los Angeles think they have an explanation, which they describe in the journal Physical Review Letters this month. Based on observation, this is an article from 2015, based on observations of the Higgs boson field at Switzerland's Large Hadron Collider, the paper is fairly impenetrable for the lay reader. In other words, you can read it, but you won't understand a damn word. That's what that means. Impenetrable means you can't enter into what it's trying to say. Okay. Even the abstract contains few words with less than 4 syllables. Now, the abstract is the short summary of what's in the paper, right? They're basically saying you can't even understand the abstract, right? Okay. But the gist of their theory, and it's only a theory, right? It's not science yet, is simple, even poetic. The conditions of the early universe were biased toward creating something out of nothing. So that's the whole premise. That's the whole thing they're trying to prove, that something is produced from nothing. Do you think you can produce something from nothing? Prabhupada says life comes from life. And most scientists say life comes from matter, right? But they're going even farther now. They're saying life comes from nothing. Right? To develop this explanation of what? That life comes from nothing? Study authors Alexander Kusenko, Lauren Pierce, and Louis Yang had to delve deep into the universe's origins. Roughly 1 decillionth of a second after the Big Bang. So in other words, they accept that there's a Big Bang. But 1 decillionth, a decillionth is like 1/millionth of a second. 1/millionth of a second, right? So they're saying roughly 1 decillionth of a second after the Big Bang, in this period, termed inflation, particles, the most basic ingredient of everything in the universe, and antiparticles, the opposite of all that, coexisted in a rapidly expanding hot soup. I wonder if it was I wonder if it was Heinz hot soup. Anyway, the two could switch identities. In other words, antiparticles could turn into particles and vice versa. But the laws of physics applied equally both, meaning they were created in perfect proportion. Shortly after inflation, after this decillionth of a second, 1/millionth of a second, right? Shortly after inflation, the universe's growth slowed, and the two kinds of particles, which are perfectly opposed in mass and charge and effectively cancel each other out, began colliding and annihilating one another. The battle would have swiftly ended the elimination of all forms of particles, a kind of cosmic, mutually assured destruction, if not for one tiny, unexplained asymmetry in the size of their forces. For every 10 billion antiparticles, there were 10 billion particles, plus 1. In other words, there were 10 billion antimatter particles, 10 billion positive particles, plus 1 extra positive particle, they're saying. All right? This is not science. This is science fiction right now. That marginal imbalance meant that matter was the last man standing, leading to the creation of the elements, stars, solar system, planet Earth, and every person on it. So this is their theory. All right, I'm not going to read the rest of it. If you want to really laugh, you can read the rest of it. The homework is you take these 2 articles. One is the surprise, the Big Bang isn't the beginning of the universe anymore. And 2 is, how did matter come to dominate the universe? You can read them, and you'll see it's complete nonsense. This is not science at all. It's all speculation. None of it is verified. Right? Science is now your homework is write down what is the scientist's definition of what science is, and write down, and you're going to have to look this up, the Vedic understanding of science. The Vedic understanding of science is different than the mundane scientist's definition of science. The Vedic definition of science is that as we say, Jivera Swarupahaya Nityara Nityara Das. That is, what is the real position of living entity? He's the eternal servant of Krishna. So the Vedic science accepts the existence of the eternal soul, which is not material. The materialistic science only examines things that are material and rejects the existence of things that are not material. So that's the main difference between the two definitions. And once you understand this, then you can see why they end up with theories like this that are completely nonsense, absolutely full of gobbledygook that doesn't make sense. They also say, like when they say in the beginning here, they say that now researchers at the University of California think they have an explanation. The journal Physical Review Letters this month, based on observations of the Higgs boson field at Switzerland's Large Hadron Collider, the paper is fairly impenetrable for the lay reader. In other words, you can read it, you won't understand a damn word. You see? So this is what they do. This is their trick. And by the way, what they're talking about, this Higgs boson field at Switzerland's Large Hadron Collider, that collider costs hundreds of billions of dollars. It's an extremely expensive machine that they made to try and prove that you can go from energy to matter. And they've never proved it. There are these colliders in Japan, in California, and the biggest one is in Switzerland on the border with France. And then they've done other things too, where they spend hundreds and billions of dollars on machine to try and prove that energy is transformed into matter. And because if they can do that, that matter that they produce is called the God particle. But they've never been able to do it. They claim they do it for like, 1/30,000th of a second. You know what 1/30,000th of a second is, right? Or 1/10,000,000th, right? 1/1,000,000th of a second. This is all nonsense. This is not even science fiction. This is just complete nonsense. Science fiction makes a little sense sometimes, right? This doesn't make sense at all. This is why Prabhupada was explaining that all they do is come up with theories that you cannot prove nowadays. They haven't come up with anything new in the last 100 years since electromagnetism and gravity. That's it. Okay, so your homework is read these two articles and compare this to what is real science. See, the definitions of the words are also false. The definitions of the words are also false. So we have to accept the definitions of the Bhagavatam and Bhagavad-Gita. Okay, so that's your homework for next week. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Are there any questions? Yeah.
Maharaj, as you have mentioned, educating, if you are not educating the kids, it will be a failure. So please bless so we can.
For the kids to be educated, not only their parents should accompany them to the class, but they should make sure that they do homework.
Yes.
If they don't do the homework, they won't really understand.
And Maharaj, one of the letter, if you allow, I can read from Prabhupada. He had also mentioned something on similar note. I will just read one paragraph. He says, child worship is more important than deity worship.
Yes, some lady asked him, one devotee lady asked him, said, Prabhupada, you're emphasizing book distribution, but I'm married and I just don't have the time to do it. I have to take care of my kids, and I feel as if I'm not serving you. So he was answering her.
So he says, if you cannot spend time with your child, then stop the duties of pujari. These children are given to us by Krishna. They are Vaishnavas, and we must be very careful to protect them. These are not ordinary children, they are Vaikuntha children. And we are very fortunate. We can give them chance to advance further in Krishna consciousness. This is very great responsibility. Do not neglect it or be confused. So Prabhupada has mentioned so strong here.
Yeah.
On the similar note.
If you have a child, your duty is to help that child become Krishna conscious. And if you don't, if you fail, you failed in Krishna consciousness. Hari Bol. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Okay. Who wants to chant? Samart, do you want to chant? No. Okay. Shrestha, you want to chant? Yeah. Samart will play the mridanga, is that right?
Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada.
Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada.
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakti Sadma.
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 Bandhamui Savadana Mate.
De Pasade Pure Sarva Asa.
Jara Prasade Bai He Bhavatoriya Jai.
Chanara Prasade Vai E Bhavatoriya Jai.
Krishna Prapti Ho Jai.
Krishna Prapti Hoya Hoite.
Krishna Prapti Ho Jai.
Krishna Prapti Hoya Hoite.
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Shri Chete Koriya Kya.
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitete Koriya Kya.
Arana Kori Ho Mane Asha.
Arana Koriya Mane Asa.
Arana Kori Ho Mane Asha.
Arana Koriya
चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशितो दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशितो
Divyajnanide prakasito
प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जते प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जते
Rukaruna Adana Janarabanda
वेद गाय जहाँ रचरितो वेद गाय जहाँ रचरितो श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आधम जनारा बंधु
Guru Karuna Sindhu Asana Janarabandhu
लोकेनाथ लोकेरा जीवाना प्रभु कोरो दया देहो मोरे पादाचया
Prabhu Kora Doya Deya Muri Padachaya
प्रभु कोरो दया देहो मोरे पादाचया
Prabhu Kora Doya Deya Muri Padachaya
इबे जात कुसुक्ति भुवाना इबे जात कुसुक्ति भुवाना प्रभुपाद पतित पवना जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा नित्य गौर हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल नित्य गौर हरि बोल
Jayo Vishnupad, Paramahansa Parivajik Shasta Tarasatarashi Shiman, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Sakahosha Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sidvaita Gadadhar, Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath, Samakunda Radha Giri Govardhana Ki Jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Shri Mayapura Dham Ki Jai, Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Tulasi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Ganga Maya Ki Jai, Jamuna Maya Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the Assembled Devotees, all glories to the Assembled Devotees, all glories to the Assembled Devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutali Srimad Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityanamani Namaste Saraswati Deve Guruvani Pacharani Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskati Satani. The lotus feet of our spiritual master, the only way by which we can attain to pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him, ecstatic prema emanates. By him, ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, friend of the poor and Lord and master of the devotees. O Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread throughout all the three worlds. We take shelter